I think there's an answer to this myth, and it is that time is neutral. It can be used either constructively or destructively. And I hate to say that I'm absolutely convinced that the forces of ill will of our nation, the forces committed to negative ends of our nation, the extreme rightists of our nation, have often used time much more effectively than the people and the forces of goodwill. And it may well be that we will have to repent in this generation, not merely for the vitriolic words and the violent actions of the bad people who will bomb a church in Birmingham, Alabama, but also for the appalling silence and indifference of the good people who sit around and say, wait on time. Somewhere we must come to see that human progress never rolls in on the wheels of inevitability, comes through the tireless efforts and the persistent work of dedicated individuals who are willing to be co-workers with God. And without this hard work, time itself becomes an ally of the primitive forces of social stagnation. And so we must help time, and we must realize that the time is always right to do right.
Hello, everyone. I'm Reverend Tim Vance, pastor at First Presbyterian Church of Santa Monica. Please join me in prayer and or meditation as we open our celebration with the invocation. To the God who welcomes all and joins us together in love. We are here in this time and place to breathe, to pray, and to reflect upon the legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. For those of us who are hurting, let us hear the words of Dr. King that affirm our dignity and embolden us with a courageous hope. For those of us in positions of power and privilege, do not let us on this day comfort ourselves with the disembodied quotations of the Good Reverend. Instead, may his life and his words inspire our lament, our confession, and our action. Today, as we celebrate Dr. King's legacy, kindle within us that holy fire that welcomes and warms all those who are left out in the cold. That holy fire that calls to us and burns away our indifference. That holy fire that animates each new movement for justice and equality. Amen.
Hello, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. people. Thank you for joining us for this, the 37th annual celebration of Dr. King and his legacy. I'm Darlene Evans, chair of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Westside Coalition, a diverse group of individuals and organizations committed to educating and promoting the work and ideals of Dr. King, and to making his dream of a world without injustice, inequality, and racism a reality. I'd like to begin our program by introducing Sue Himmelrich, the mayor of Santa Monica, for a special welcome from our great city.
I'm Sue Himmelrich, mayor of the city of Santa Monica. We are glad that you're able to join us to celebrate Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. today. Dr. King was a seminal leader, and we are very much indebted to him for his contribution to our society and to the world. His vision and activism is sorely needed during these difficult times, and we here in Santa Monica greatly appreciate the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Westside Coalition for all of their efforts to keep Dr. King's ideals alive. On behalf of my colleagues on the Santa Monica City Council, I'd like to congratulate the Westside Coalition on keeping their organization and commitment to Dr. King going for 37 years, and we wish them another 37 years of such tremendous success. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Himmelrich. We have an exciting program for you today. We hope to inspire and energize you for what is likely to be a very difficult year ahead. With so many of the principles we hold dear under attack, including democracy, equality, civil rights, voting rights, and even the very basic concepts of truth and reality. This is not to say that the global pandemic is no longer a crisis, because it is. There are just so many other important issues which we also need to address. We must all remember that voting, which is always important, is super critical this year, because our way of life depends on voting for candidates and issues that support democracy, civil rights, equality, and voting rights. We need everyone to not only vote, but to support organizations dedicated to those values as well, particularly in states that do not have the expansive voting rights that we have here in California, and in states which are undertaking significant voter subversion efforts. We need everyone to take the threats to our democracy and our way of life very seriously. Maya Angelou once said that courage is the most important of all the virtues, because without courage, you can't practice any other virtue consistently. We encourage all of you to courageously confront and push back against the mistruths and lies that are being spread by some segments of our society, and to do everything you can to preserve our civil rights, our equality, our voting rights, and our democracy. Dr. King said, "The time is always right to do what is right," and we hope this program inspires you to do just that.
Hello, my name is Monica White, and I'm the chair of the MLK Westside Coalition Community Light Award. The Community Light Award is given annually to literally shine a light on a nonprofit organization that demonstrates the principles of Dr. King through its activities and services. This year, our award goes to Get Lit, Words Ignite, an organization that meets our criteria on many levels and was unanimously selected. One of the organization's many programs emphasizes the power of the spoken word. The program's motto, using poetry to increase literacy, empower youth, and inspire communities, highlights the focus that has made them a model of how to engage youth in educating communities across the nation about a broad range of issues. Here's a short video about this extraordinary organization. Take a look.
For the past 12 years, Get Lit has brought its award-winning curriculum to high schools throughout California. Poetry can liberate the soul of a young person and teach them how to value the unique quality of their own voice, giving them the power to speak up about the things that are important to them, becoming advocates for themselves and ambassadors for change in their communities. This is what we do at Get Lit. We empower. It all starts in school, where Get Lit engages students in the reading, writing, memorization, and performance of classic and original poetry, with professional development and on-site mentor visits for teachers. Our after-school programs include free Saturday poetry workshops, monthly open mics, filmmaking workshops, summer camp, and more. Both programs culminate in our annual Classic Slam, a 3-day poetry slam connecting hundreds of youth from over 50 schools to compete for scholarships and professional opportunities. Here we meet youth who become our future Get Lit players. These award-winning youth ambassadors complete 400 hours of workshops and performances per year and reach thousands of their peers through in-school assemblies and public presentations. Graduated Get Lit players can become literati, a 1-year fellowship offering job training and professional opportunities. This work is important because 75% of both 12th and 8th graders lack proficiency in writing. The Los Angeles Unified School District has a 34% dropout rate, and the suicide rate amongst 10 to 14-year-olds has doubled in the last 5 years. Get Lit offers a solution. 98% of Get Lit players go to college, and 70% get scholarships. 97% of teachers see a significant increase in attendance, engagement, and grades after participation in Get Lit's core programs. And the Get Lit players' performances reach over 50,000 youth each year and over 300 million people online, providing a healthy outlet for feelings and a creative community. Your support makes a difference. Over 8,000 students graduate from Get Lit's in-school program each year from more than 100 schools, providing a lifeline for Los Angeles youth. And over the past 12 years, we have watched our program explode with more young people to serve than ever before. Get Lit uses poetry to inspire and awaken the best in our youth, to increase 21st century skills of collaboration, critical thinking, creativity, and communication while providing a space of joy and hope. Join us in this work so we can lift up our city and further empower our world together.
Among the leadership of Get Lit is Mr. Mason Granger. Mr. Granger is a deputy director at Get Lit. Originally from Philadelphia, he is a poet with more than 15 years of professional experience on stage and in classrooms across 49 states and 6 countries as part of the performance poetry trio, Mayhem Poets. In 2014, he created Slam Find, a digital platform designed to connect fans of poetry videos with the poets and live poetry venues. Between 2016 and 2018, he produced hundreds of poetry videos that continue to garner millions of views across multiple platforms. His mission is always to keep the live in live poetry. Today, we are pleased to have Mr. Granger accept our Community Light Award. He will also introduce performances by some of the program's participants that demonstrate the talent, the passion, and the attention to what's important to our younger population.
Hello, I'm Mason Granger, the Interim Deputy Director here at Get Lit. And on behalf of all of us here, I want to thank you at the MLK Westside Coalition for this honor, for this award, and also for your support of our mission of empowering young people all over Los Angeles to not only find their voice, but then the courage to back that voice up with actions. And I can think of no better way to honor today MLK's legacy. People forget that he was more than just nice speeches. He was also on the ground after those speeches, before those speeches, backing it all up with direct action. And so that's hopefully what we're inspiring in the young people to next generation move forward and apply their voice and their own courage to shaping the world that they will carry us all through. So on behalf of all of us, once again, thank you so much for this honor. Next up, I'm very happy to introduce Cyrus Roberts. Cyrus is a Get Lit alum and currently a student at UC Santa Barbara. Cyrus's poem is entitled The Kids.
My name is Cyrus Roberts and my poem is entitled The Kids. The kids are not all right. The kids are fighting wars with electronic signatures and the same $20 being passed around. The kids are missing class for grassroots action. The kids are cycling through news feeds like racial battle fatigue roulette. The kids are being fed bias. But the kids are cooking billionaire fundraising fiestas out of 99-cent ramen noodle food deserts. The kids are boiling water for throat coat lemon honey tea, protecting their voices from screaming dead names. The kids are correcting dead names in the mouths of unchanging adults. The kids are sick and tired of saying they're just tired when really they're sick, but they're sick of calling in sick when really they're depressed because the kids are depressed. And no, it's not because they're on that damn phone. It's because the kids are worried about bringing kids into a world that don't give a damn. The kids can't see a future past 33. The kids are thinking about things like sea levels and ozone layers instead of candy and Johnny's new haircut. The kids are taking sewing lessons and self-defense classes and building homes out of poems. The kids are being held hostage by Big Pharma, inside and out. The kids are memorizing Miranda. The kids with darker skin are taking their hoods off when they see red and blues. The kids are learning to love bruise because of who they can't choose. Man, the kids are starving. The kids don't got to be beat down by COINTELPRO no more. We got no leaders. The kids got no leaders. The kids are all caught fighting themselves in social media prisons designed by silicon wardens in the Valley of Profit. The kids are all just trying to make each other sing and laugh and dance and be told that they're doing a good job. The kids are all loud, sacrificial lambs to a silent generation of butchers. The kids are not all right. The kids are wearing more hats than their necks can support the weight for. The kids are being made to be everything in this cruel, beautiful world. But kids.
Hello, I'm Alexander Corinth.
And hi, my name is Jacob Scranton.
We were last year's awardees, and we are 2 members of the newly formed youth committee. Today, we are here to announce the recipients of this year's awards. The Martin Luther King Jr. Westside Coalition aims to educate and motivate the youth regarding the principles of nonviolence.
The time is always right to do what is right, and thus, the Westside Coalition is actively cultivating the next generation by inspiring the youth to use Dr. King's 6 principles of nonviolence in their everyday lives.
Every year, the coalition offers awards to high school seniors and junior college students. Students from Westside schools submit their original art pieces inspired by Dr. King's principles. This year, there are 6 awards: the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Award, the Sue Schurman and Sally Mendelson Award, the Clyde Smith Award, the Saul Morrison Award, the Rebecca Benjamin Award, and the Lily Bell Blakely Award.
And now for our winners. First, we have Elise Day of Bishop Montgomery High School, who won the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Award.
Hello, my name is Elise Day. I'm a senior at Bishop Montgomery High School in Torrance. I submitted a spoken word poem about Dr. Martin Luther King's principle number 5. My poem spoke about how nonviolence is key, but in today's world where violence becomes the norm. Trying to keep the peace while racism is on the rise can be difficult. It angers me that I'm still living in a time where Black lives still don't matter. We all need to follow and digest the words of Dr. King, love must be spontaneous and unselfish. Thank you for the scholarship committee for selecting me for this prestigious award.
Tanya Goodsmith of El Segundo High School, who won the Sue Schurman and Sally Mendelson Award.
Hi, my name is Taya Goodsmith. I'm a senior and I currently attend El Segundo High School. When I look back at my essay about what I wrote about Martin Luther King's principles of nonviolence, I mainly focused on principle 4 and 6, specifically 4 because it says nonviolence accepts violence if necessary in the course of achieving a goal. I related my essay more towards the Black Lives Matter protest that happened back in 2020 and how this principle was a big influence on that movement. Once again, I am just so grateful and I truly appreciate everyone for this award, and specifically a big shout out to Dr. Bernice Brown for just being so supportive. Thank you so much.
Next, we have Christian Hagos of Santa Monica High School, who won the Clyde Smith Award.
Hi, I'm Christian Hagos and I'm a senior at Santa Monica High School. I wrote an essay that pertains to Dr. Martin Luther King's 3rd principle of nonviolence, which states, nonviolence recognizes that evildoers are also victims, nonviolence seeks to win opponents' support rather than defeat opponents, and nonviolence seeks a win-win solution. I specifically wrote about how these experiences have shaped me as a person and how they've shaped us as a society. Thanks to Dr. Brown and to the MLK Westside Coalition for this award.
And Eddie Jones of Alexander Hamilton High School, who won the Saul Morrison Award.
Hi, my name is Eddie Jones and I attend Alexander Hamilton High School, and I sent in a poem about Dr. King's 3rd principle of nonviolence, and I really want to say I am completely honored to have been considered for this scholarship, and thank you so much.
And next, we have Leilani Rimmer of Bishop Montgomery High School, who won the Rebecca Benjamin Award.
Hi, my name is Leilani Rimmer and I attend Bishop Montgomery High School in Torrance, California. I submitted a poem called Evidence of the Things Not Seen. My poem discusses the adversity that I've been through within the last few months as a young Black woman. The poem focuses primarily on Principle 5 that speaks on how nonviolence resists violence of the spirit as well as the body. Nonviolence chooses love instead of hate. This love is spontaneous, unselfish, and creative. This love gives willingly knowing that the return could be hostility. It's unending in the ability to forgive in order to restore community. and love does not sink to the level of the hater. With that being said, I just want to say thank you so much for this award and for this amazing opportunity.
And Tyler Williams of Larchmont Charter School, who won the Lily Bell Blakely Award.
Hi, my name is Tyler Williams. I go to Larchmont Charter School in Los Angeles, California, and I'm 17 years old. I just want to thank Dr. Brown for giving me this opportunity to write about Dr. King's 6 principles of nonviolence. Out of the 6 principles, I chose number 5, which is choosing love over hate. I strongly agree with that because I think without some form of love, someone might get hurt. Thank you.
Congratulations to all the award recipients, and thank you so much for your time.
Congratulations to all of the award recipients, and thank you very much.
Before we proceed further with the program, we want to thank some of the people and institutions who helped make this celebration possible, including the City of Santa Monica, Mayor Hemmerich, Mayor Pro Tem Kristen McGowan, and their colleagues on the City Council, Santa Monica College Associates, Santa Monica College, Soka Gakkai International USA, the RAND Corporation, the Santa Monica Westside Legacy Fund for Women and Girls, and the Santa Monica Bay Area Human Relations Council. We want to also give a special thank you to the Santa Monica College Department of Communications and Media Studies, Professor Rodelia Shaw, Professor Gail Fetzer, and the students in her television production class, Ray Martin, an SMC engineer, and Fernando Belzon, our editor, all of whom worked very hard to put this virtual event together. We encourage all of you to make a donation using the donate button on our website or by sending a check to our address at 1515 7th Street, number 199, Santa Monica, California, 90401. You can also contribute to our organization through Amazon Smile and Rouse, the details of which are included at the end of the program and on our website. Last, but definitely not least, I want to thank all of the volunteers of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Westside Coalition Planning Committee for their dedication and hard work all year long to bring you this celebration. Thank you all so very much. Their names are listed in the program book on our website, which we encourage you to view if you didn't get a chance to do so before the program began. And now, back to the program.
Next up, I'm happy to introduce Get Lit player Elora Sparnicht. Elora is a junior at Ocean County School of the Arts, and Elora's poem is entitled American Slackers.
Hi, I'm Elora Sparnicht, and this is To America's Slackers. You're in first grade. Table 3's been throwing erasers at each other, so the whole class has to stay in at recess. No one ever said group punishment was fair, but it's life. And maybe after 20 minutes of being glared at by Table 1, Table 2, Table 4, Table 5, and Table 6, Table 3 will take a hint. You're in second grade. It's almost Thanksgiving, so you're coloring a turkey. The teacher pairs you with Ben. You suggest coloring the turkey brown and red and orange and yellow because that's realistic, and coloring neatly inside the lines because those are the rules. But Ben colors the turkey green with blue scales that go outside the lines and beady red eyes that make you want to cry. You don't understand why Ben would do that until you remember that Ben sat at Table 3, and Table 3 didn't mind staying in at recess. You go through 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th, 7th, 8th grade. You go through life thinking that if you don't throw erasers and color inside the lines and stay on the nice list and do all your homework and mind your own business and follow the law, you'll be okay. But then, you get assigned one whopper of a group project, and you're failing big time. Because until Table 3 can put their erasers away and stop seeing people and throwing parties and traveling, and until Table 3 can put their masks on and get vaccinated and start doing their part, until everyone cares, nobody gets to go out for recess. No one ever said group punishment was fair, but it's life. And maybe after a year and a half of being glared at by the sick and the dying and the grieving and the doctors and the nurses and the essential workers and the people who want this pandemic to finally end, America's slackers will take a hint.
It's my distinct honor to introduce Santa Monica's Miss Juneteenth, LaVerne Ross. Mrs. LaVerne Ross is a community treasure as well as a lifetime achiever. Her talents run from theater arts to cosmetology, but we recognize her today for her decades of community leadership as a longtime supporter of education and producer of cultural events, as we know as Juneteenth. Arriving in Santa Monica in 1957 from Lubbock, Texas, Ms. Ross was welcomed by relatives who had recently been displaced from Belmar Triangle. A decade later, they were displaced by the Santa Monica Freeway, but she and her family endured. In 1991, Ms. Ross thought back to the celebration she knew as a child in Texas. For over 100 years, Black Texans had gathered the week of the 19th of June at a place called Comanche Creek. Each year, they read the Emancipation Proclamation aloud, picnicked under oak trees, danced and sang in celebration of the 19th of June, 1865, when the news arrived in Texas of the end of slavery. She asked, why not bring this event to Santa Monica? It was time. And there was money. Santa Monica's assistant city manager, Susan McCarthy, had just learned of an opportunity to receive state funding if it were to be in the need of a cultural event. Ms. Ross convinced her that Juneteenth celebration was exactly the cultural event the city should sponsor. As she tells it, the rest is history. The first Santa Monica Juneteenth festival was held outdoors, just like in Texas. Children's voices lent a festive air to the scene at Virginia Avenue Park. NAACP President Norm Curry ran the barbecue. There was homemade peach cobbler for dessert. Ms. Ross donated her time to many other causes as well. Her events brought attention to serious health concerns that affect the Black community. For years, she served on the Martin Luther King Westside Coalition Reception and Education Awards Committee. She was given the Humanitarian Award by the California State Chapter of the Eastern Star. Last year's local Juneteenth community celebration produced by the Reverend Lemuel Mac Moset's congregation and held outdoors on the Calvary Baptist Church campus was especially sweet in that it marked the first time in the entire country celebrated Juneteenth as a national holiday. On June 19th, 2021, Ms. Ross received the well-deserved recognition from the city for bringing Juneteenth into Santa Monica 3 decades earlier. Ms. Ross may have had to give up her dream of becoming an actress, but she has been Santa Monica's leading lady of community service. She has led with impeccable style, grace, and just the right blend of celebration and seriousness. Thank you, Ms. Juneteenth, and God bless you from the grateful Santa Monica community.
Hello, everyone. The reason why I am here, and I am just elated. I am very proud that the Westside Martin Luther King Coalition Board of Directors are honoring me with this wonderful, prestigious award of the Lifetime Achievement. You know, this brings me to such an extreme feeling when I heard that this honor was coming. It, if you all recall what Cinderella felt like when her fairy godmother, when she was told that she could attend the big ball. Well, that was what I felt when this information was brought to me regarding me being honored by the Martin Luther King Westside Coalition, as well as some of the things within the Lifetime Achievement Award. It encompasses some things that I had done over my lifetime, during my lifetime rather, and that happens to be the bringing the Juneteenth celebration to the city of Santa Monica, now holding the name of the 11th federal holiday in the nation, signed by President Biden. I have some people that I would like to thank, and first I want to thank my son and my deceased son and my daughter. They stood by me over the years through laughing and through crying and struggling to the top of my lungs. They were there for me every moment, and I want to thank them once and all. I want to let them know, not my son, and hopefully up above, Roland is listening down on me, giving him accolades for being there to carry on the legacy of the slave ancestors. But I would like to thank some additional people. An individual, Andrew Adams, he was my heartbeat at the beginning of starting Juneteenth celebration. He was there every year in the beginning years. Right now, he resides in Australia. But I just wanted to make mention because he was my publicist from the beginning. I would like to thank the Virginia Avenue Park staff, Carla Fantozzi, Eula Fritz, and also Betty Macias, who is a specialist in the city right now. But I just wanted to bring attention to those city staff people, and also the NAACP, who stood by the Juneteenth Celebration Committee Incorporated until we got out of our baby stages, and they held with us with each individual Juneteenth. And I appreciate the National Advancement of Colored People Santa Monica Venice chapter. I appreciate that, and also my board of directors. And I would like to say that if you have 2 or 3 weeks a year to wait for me to call each and every one of the people that I would love to thank, it would take at least another year for me to thank all of those people, but I just cannot. You know who you are, and I just want you to know that I thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Every time I feel the Spirit moving in my heart, I will pray. Every time I feel the Spirit moving nobody. Turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching on to freedom land. I ain't gonna let no hatred turn me around. No, turn me around. No, turn me around. Ain't gonna let no hatred turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching on to freedom land. I ain't gonna let injustice turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let injustice turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching on to freedom
It gives me great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker today, LZ Granderson. LZ is a wonderfully perceptive and illuminating writer and commentator. He currently works as a sports and culture columnist with the LA Times and hosts the Life Out Loud audio podcast. He has worked for several media outlets, including the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, the South Bend Tribune, and the Grand Rapids Press. For 17 years, he worked at ESPN, where his duties included editing ESPN the magazine, maintaining a regular column for ESPN, and serving as a contributing commentator on Outside the Lines, Around the Horn, and Sports Center. As part of ESPN's tennis team, he interviewed athletes such as Serena Williams, Roger Federer, and Rafael Nadal. His work has been recognized by Human Rights Campaign and GLAAD, and in 2011 he was named Journalist of the Year by the National Lesbian and Gay Journalists Association. His columns have been recognized by the National Association of Black Journalists as well as the Online News Association. His TED Talk on LGBTQ equality has more than 1.6 million views. Welcome, LZ.
Hi, I'm LZ Granderson, op-ed columnist for the Los Angeles Times and ABC News contributor. And while I'm sure we're all disappointed that we can't be together physically, it is nice to be together virtually, because it still is important that we honor the life and work of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., but also that we take the time to encourage one another and remind one another that that work is far from over. There are still a lot of forces in today's society that are working against the principles that Dr. King talked about, that he preached about, and that he gave his life for. And so, again, I am disappointed that we can't fellowship together in person, but I'm glad that we're here together. I'd like to share with you briefly a story about what's happening in Texas first, just as an example of the work that still needs to be done. In Texas, they had a fantastic increase in population over the last 10 years, such a high increase that they actually have additional seats in the House of Representatives in Congress. Much of that, more than 80% of that, was fueled by people of color. Unfortunately, when the congressional maps were redrawn, not only were the number of minority-dominant districts decreased, but the number of white-dominant congressional districts increased. And what's really disturbing about that trend is that Texas has the highest population of Black people of any state in the country. I repeat, there are more Black people living in the state of Texas than any other state in the country. And there isn't a single predominantly Black congressional district in Texas. So when I think about the work that still needs to be done, these are some of the examples that I'm talking about. Right now, there are more than 400 bills that state legislators around this country have introduced designed to repress votes, to suppress voting. Many of these bills and laws that have been introduced recently target people of color, target Black people. So again, as I talk about the work that still needs to be done, I'm not just simply talking about we need to do more marching. I'm talking about we need to be doing more voting, and we also need to be paying more attention to what's happening with the elected officials who are in office. Because a lot of these moves that are being made are being done in the shadows. And we need to be using Dr. King's as a North Star and let that light from the North Star shine light on that darkness so we know where we need to go and how we need to show up. Now, I spent a lot of time thinking about the theme, which is the time is always right to do the right thing. And, there are a lot of stories that, I could tell that through my reporting about why that particular theme applies to the life and work of Dr. King. But I think I want to focus in on what happened in 1956 first. In 1956, Dr. King meets a man by the name of Bayard Rustin. And for those of you who don't know who Bayard Rustin is, he is often credited as being the key organizer for the March on Washington in 1963. Now, remember, this is before TikTok and social media. This is before cell phones and the internet. So the organization that was required was a lot more man-powered, person-powered, if you will. So we're talking about phone calls. We're talking about letter writing. We're talking about word of mouth to organize all of those vendors, the sound system and equipments, the buses, the speakers. All of that basically fell on the shoulders of Bayard Rustin. And in 1956, when he first met Dr. King, Bayard Rustin was already a well-established civil rights leader in his own right. In fact, he was already known as not just being a civil rights leader, but someone who taught and preached the principles of nonviolence. So when he goes to visit Dr. King in 1956 and notices that there are armed gunmen outside of his home, and that there are guns inside of Dr. King's house, one of the first things that he told Dr. King was that he needed to remove the guns from his presence. Because it's very difficult to be a convincing nonviolent advocator if you're surrounded by guns. Makes sense now, but I can only imagine what Dr. King and Coretta Scott King must have thought in 1956 when this man walks in and suggests they get rid of all of their guns. But that's what happened. And, I applaud Dr. King for doing so, because there's a very good chance that a figure such as a J. Edgar Hoover may have used that information nefariously if he had known that Dr. King had harbored all these guns while preaching nonviolence. But then something really unfortunate happened in 1960. In 1960, right before the DNC, Dr. King and his supporters were dissatisfied with the progress that was being made and decided that they were going to organize a march at the DNC, which coincidentally was being held in Los Angeles at the time. It was the DNC that was going to name JFK and Lyndon Johnson officially to the ticket. Now, when the Democratic Party got wind that Dr. King was planning this protest, they sent someone to discourage him from doing so. That person was Adam Clayton Powell. And Adam Clayton Powell, who was a congressman from New York, in fact, he was the first Black congressman from the state of New York, he goes to visit Dr. King, and he basically blackmails him into calling off the protest. And how does he do that? By threatening to say that he and Bayard Rustin were in a romantic relationship and having an affair. Oh, I forgot to tell you, Bayard Rustin was openly gay. Openly gay Black man fighting for civil rights in the 1940s, 1950s, 1960s, in the 70s, and into the 80s until he passed away. But at this particular time, we all know where the country was in terms of equality. I mean, Black folks had been marching for well over a century to get full equality. So the LGBTQ community had close to nothing in terms of equality at this time. And so this threat not only looked to tarnish the name and work of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., but it really could have tarnished the entire civil rights movement, which, reminds me of that phrase, all skin folk ain't kinfolk. Because to threaten Dr. King with that rumor would have totally derailed the civil rights movement. But Adam Clayton Powell was doing the bidding of the Democratic Party at that time, and knew that that would be an effective tool to get Dr. King to call the protest off. Now, I'm not going to say Dr. King made the wrong move, because no one person is greater than an entire movement. But it is disappointing, and reportedly, Bayard Rustin was disappointed that Dr. King did not stand by his side, especially since he had been such an amazing soldier up to this point in the movement. But he also understood the political ramifications if he didn't jettison him from the movement. But here is where the story applies to our principle that the time is always right to do the right thing. When the March on Washington was being discussed, and people were asking who is going to organize it, Dr. King did not hesitate to say Bayard Rustin was the best person for the job. Now remember, just 3 years prior, Dr. King was in a situation in which he felt he had to jettison Bayard Rustin away from the movement. But 3 years later, frustrated with the lack of accomplishments that the movement had at that time, and needing to have something legislatively to show for all of the marching and the efforts, Dr. King turned to his friend. He turned to his mentor. He turned to the openly gay black man who many people did not want connected to the civil rights movement because of his sexual orientation. But Dr. King turned to him because he knew he was the right person for the job. He was the best person for the job. And considering the impact that march had, considering the impact that day had, not just in American history, but global history, it is obvious that Dr. King made the right call then as well. He knew it was the right time to do the right thing. And had he not done the right thing at the right time, we're not quite sure how that March on Washington would have transpired. Now, I'm not saying this to try to conflate two different movements that a lot of people feel has two different priorities. That's not my purpose of sharing the story. My purpose of sharing that story is to talk about how Dr. King stood up for what was right. He stood up for what was best. And even when people around him, and oh, by the way, there were still people upset that Bayard Rustin was there, he knew it was the right thing to do. And he stood up in the face of that homophobia, and he said, no, enough. We need him now. That's power. It's power that's not talked about a lot. We so often like to talk about the quotes of Dr. King, particularly people who don't really care about the life of Dr. King. They always have his quotes in their mouths, specifically the ones that are dealing with, equality. They never want to talk about reparations, which Dr. King talked about. They never want to talk about how white liberals don't stand up in the moments of true conflict the way that they say they will. They don't ever quote that part. They always talk about, I have a dream. But they don't talk about why he needed to have that dream in the first place. They don't talk about the nightmares. They don't like to talk about the nightmares, which is why we've seen so many legislative attacks against critical race theory, against the 1619 Project. That's the reason why we've seen, elected officials like the Florida governor, Governor DeSantis, using Dr. King's words to justify making critical race theory illegal. That's the reason why. It's not because they sincerely are true followers of the philosophy and teachings of Dr. King. It's because they much rather cherry pick his words in order to give cover to the nefarious activity that they're up to legislatively. It's always the right time to do the right thing. And I'm sure there are many people who take a look at what's happening with the Biden administration and what's perceived as a lack of movement. Now is not the time to stop pushing. Now is the time to lean in and push more. I'm sure there are people who are thinking, well, why bother voting? They're going to do whatever they want to do anyway. I tell you why. Because the old phrase goes that if you're not at the table, then you're on the menu. And black people have been on the menu long enough. We should not be surrendering the power that we do have. And there is still power in that vote. If you don't believe me, then why on earth are there more than 400 bills that have been scripted in a very short period of time to suppress the vote? Because of Georgia turning blue, because of Arizona turning blue. States that have long been considered conservative and red turned blue when people showed up to vote their conscience and vote for policies that they wanted to see enacted. It's the reason why in the state of Texas, as I mentioned earlier, the gerrymandering that was done to try to suppress the vote. Why? Because there's still power in that vote. So it's always the right time to do the right thing. So if you didn't vote before, that doesn't mean you don't get a chance to vote now, because there's a very important midterm election coming up, and I don't need to tell you based on what we witnessed during January 6th what's at stake. And if Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in the 1960s can stand up to his enemies and his peers alike and say, we're going to set aside our differences, we're going to set aside the homophobia and the sexism and all the other isms that have been dividing us, we're going to set that aside because at the end of the day, we all want the same damn thing. Equality for America to fulfill her promise. So I leave you with those words of this theme. Now is always the right time to do the right thing. Dr. King did it time and time again. Now it's our turn.
hand in hand someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we'll walk hand in hand someday. We'll shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. Oh, we shall overcome someday.
We thank you all for sharing your time with us to celebrate the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It has been our pleasure to present this program to you, and we hope that you have enjoyed it. Enjoy the rest of your holiday. Thank you.